Hello and welcome to Soundwaves, the Ellen MacArthur Cancer Trust's official podcast. We're glad to have you with us. My name's Scott, and this week we're focusing on one person's 10-year relationship with the Trust. Izzy's first trip was on the 26th of July 2010, almost 10 years ago to the day. She sailed from the Isle of Wight while in recovery from Hodgkin's lymphoma. She's been involved with the Trust in one form or another every single year since, going from a young person receiving support to being an incredibly active volunteer and fundraiser while balancing a really busy personal life too. This is Izzy's story to tell, and we hope you enjoy hearing from her. The conversation really made me reflect on the importance of long term and ongoing support and how that support changes depending on what stage of life you're at. I think as well it really helped me understand the scope of what kind of relationship or relationships people have with the trust. Here it is, we hope you enjoy. Izzy, it's been 10 years almost to the day since you came on your first trust trip. We'll get into all the details of how it happened and how it all came together, but looking back from where you are now, do you recognise that Izzy from 10 years ago?
No, not at all. She was a completely different girl. She was about to finish primary school, go into a brand new secondary school with triple the amount of children. I then had to think about moving house soon, and it just everything was throwing me off course, and completely different to where I am now with my courage, with my personality, just everything.
And can you remember what it was that made you come along in the first place? Like, were you looking for a certain kind of support? Were you drawn in by the sailing? Had you had it recommended to you?
Yeah, so we had quite a big involvement with CLIC Sargent when I was in hospital, and they were the ones that pointed us towards the trust, and said, because you're in Southampton Hospital, they've got the big connections there currently. So they pointed us towards one of the scouts, and they showed us what the trips were all about, told us what would happen. We signed up instantly because I've always been a lover of water, so it's sort of just a natural thing for me to do. And so yeah, joined in.
Was there any sort of convincing necessary, or were you nervous, or how were you feeling at the like on that weekend before your first trip?
I was definitely nervous. I'd spent some time away from my parents as a child. They'd go away for a week or a weekend, so I'd go to my siblings' house. But this, considering what I'd just been through, this felt huge, to be away from my mum and dad for a whole week on a boat in the middle of the Solent. If anything goes wrong, what's going to happen? And meeting new people, it was still my confidence at that age. I wasn't good with people my own age at all. I was fine with younger children, but anyone my age or older I couldn't communicate with. So I was really nervous that, like, when I first met these people, how would I react? How would they react? Would they like me? Would I like them? There was just a load of those worries going on. But as soon as we got on that little lifeboat at Southampton, and went straight over, I was like, actually, I can do this. These people are amazing.
Was it the case that you get on trips where on the Monday everyone's quite quiet and quite shy, and by the Thursday everyone's just you can't keep them calm again?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone on that little boat going over to the island was just so silent. Like, you could hear every wave against the boat. And then coming back at the end of the week, you couldn't even hear the water.
And you ended up coming on a trip from 2010 to 2016 every year as a young person. What was it that kept you coming back?
The love of the water, something new, the friends I'd made. I wasn't necessarily going back to the same people, the same residential trip, but it was still the knowledge that these people are my friends, even if I haven't met them yet, because we've all been through a similar thing. We can all communicate in that way and connect. So it was an opportunity for me to get out of my comfort zone, but also be in my comfort zone, if that makes any sense at all.
I guess it's that place of familiarity. You can go back to each year,
Yeah.
you know that it's there, and you sort of you look forward to each year.
Yeah, and it was the volunteers as well, knowing that I'd see some of the same volunteers year after year if they went back to the same residentials, or that they seemed to come on the same residentials as me, and just, there's a couple of volunteers that stick in your mind, and you're like, oh, I really want to see them again because they make you laugh or make you cry or anything.
Cry in a good way.
Yes, of course, yes. Like when they hit you in the face with a water pistol.
And you were saying there, residentials, all your return trips were to residentials. Was there anything in particular that drew you to them?
Um, it's more the first time trip drew me away from doing that again. So I'm a water person, but I need to have a break on land. So the my first time trip when I was well it was 2010 was I can't remember how old I was, but that was I got seasick and tired, and it was confined in that small space for 4 days with people. Yes, you get to know, but still it was too much time on the water with not enough space. You know, I went to the residential. I think I went to Bradwell, my first residential trip, my second trip with the trust, and I just instantly loved it because the minute I needed that time away from people, I could go up to my room and lie on my bed and no one would disturb me. Whereas on the boat, you go into your bed and suddenly you're sharing your bed with someone else and they'll come in, or you can still hear what's going up on deck or anything. There wasn't that space that I needed. I'm quite an independent person.
I guess it shows the difference in trips as well, though, because I think a lot of people just assume, we go sailing at the trust, but actually there is that choice to do the residential as well, which is a bit of a different experience.
Yes, yes. I always say that I do love the residentials 10 times more. Also because of the fact that I can take myself away, but also the huge variety. Like I've said many a time, I'm a water person, and the sailing on the big boats didn't give me a lot of opportunity to be in the water. If you were in the water, it was when you were practicing man overboard, and that was a bad thing if you were actually in the water and not the life buoy. So when I was on the residential trips, it was, oh, if I go out on my kayak and I capsize it, I can be in the water. Or if I capsize the little sailing boats, I'll be in the water. And it was just that extra fun element of it. You know, you could mess around a little bit more because if you did capsize, you had to get yourself back up and join the others. You know, whereas if the big boat capsized on the first time trips, you're all in a little bit of trouble.
I guess you mentioned the sort of familiarity that you can come back to every year. When you do it for 6 years in a row, do you get something new from it each time?
Oh yes, yes. Because I think only once did I do two of the same residential trips in a row. So usually it would be like a Bradwell Lake District, Bradwell Lake District, Bradwell Lake type thing. And so I'd miss a year, come back, and suddenly everything would be different. There'd be new instructors, there'd be a new activity, or they've changed the rules, or something would be different, and so I'd get something new out of it. Or also, you're only there for a week, 4 days. You really have activities for, so you never did the same activities even year after year. There was activities that another group did you didn't do in that week, and then you come back a couple of years later and I'd be able to do windsurfing or gill scrambling or archery or high ropes. It was completely different, which really helped because I think it would have been quite boring if I'd gone back and done the exact same activities every time.
And then it was in 2017, I think, you became a volunteer. So what was it like making that switch from being a young person on a trip to volunteering with them and looking out for them?
Very weird. I still felt like a young person myself. I'd only just turned 18 in the April before the August, so it still felt very new to me to be an adult and then suddenly to be a volunteer on the trip. It was, oh, okay, I'm actually, not in charge, but in charge. I'm not that little child anymore. And also quite a lot of the instructors from Bradwell in the Lake District remembered me as a young child, a young person. So coming back as a volunteer, it was the way we communicated had to change as well, because they had to see me as a volunteer and I had to see them more as a colleague than a person in charge. And also realizing that Bradwell has a staff room. That was a big one.
Perks of the role, really. Perks of the role.
Yeah.
I guess because you did these trips as a young person for you did 7 across 6 years.
Mm.
By the 5th and 6th and 7th, you're maybe seeing people who are on their first return trip, so it's only their second trip. So did you already have a sort of taster for what it would be like to have some responsibility in a sense, because you sort of knew what the lay of the land was?
Yeah, so on my last trip as a young person, I was in, of course, the older group. They split you all into groups on the residentials. I was in the older group, and it was quite a matter of showing the ropes to the younger ones. But also, the volunteers would quite happily leave you. You know, when you go out for the day sale at the Lake District, it'd be okay. So we know that Izzy, Gemma, and Matt can quite happily handle the boat on their own, whereas those three girls need to have Paul with them. So it would be, right, you three can have the boat on your own and make your way down to Coniston, while the younger ones do need the volunteer with them. So it's having that extra responsibility that we could sail the boat on our own. And we did. We didn't capsize, whereas Paul's boat did capsize with the three little girls in it.
Just throwing Paul's name in there, just.
Oh yeah, of course. I hope he's listening.
And when it comes to actually volunteering, what kind of volunteer are you? What young people think about you as a volunteer?
Oh, I don't know. I'm fun, but I'm caring. I know that I'm always like ready to listen to them and look after them, but I hope they don't think I'm boring or bossy. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I have any outstanding qualities. I'm not the funniest. I'm not the boldest, the bravest, but I am that caring person that would just be that person they can come to in their time of need, because it happens to all of us on the trips. You have a moment where you might miss home, or something happens that you're not familiar with and you just need to go and talk to someone, and I'm always happy to be that person.
And do you think that listening part of it is maybe the sort of key to being, a good trust volunteer?
Yes. Oh yes, definitely, because it's sort of an unwritten rule amongst us that we don't explicitly talk about cancer, but over the course of however long you're with the trust, you will say your cancer story multiple times, because it's just sort of that listening to each other's stories that kicks everything off, especially on like the first time trip. I remember we were all sat in one of the boats around the table and we just went around and shared all of our cancer stories. And after that, everyone suddenly was like, oh, okay, we're all the same. Even though we'd all had completely different experiences, we were all the same. And we went off and played a game of cards. And it just connected us a lot more.
So do you see, even as a young person or as a volunteer, the benefit in having young people who have been supported by the trust become volunteers, because
Oh,
there
yeah.
is that sort of we're all the same feeling?
Yes, definitely. The volunteers that I can remember from being a young person myself are the ones who are graduate volunteers who've been young people themselves, because you know what to expect. You know exactly what they're feeling. You've been in their shoes. Sometimes you even slept in the same bed they're currently sleeping in. There is such a feeling of being there that you can just help them so much better. I feel, I don't have the other perspective, of course, of not being a graduate volunteer, but I just feel you have that bigger connection because you've been there, done it, got the t-shirt.
And then outside of volunteering, you've also been involved with fundraising. Can you tell us a bit about what kind of things you've done?
Yeah, so ever since I was cured, really, we've done big fundraising things for various charities that have helped me, or not even helped me, just like cancer charities. My two big ones, of course, are CLIC Sargent, which helped me while I was ill, and then Ellen MacArthur, which have helped me since I've been ill. So they both sort of came hand in hand whenever we did any fundraising. So we used to do, we own like a area that has a huge riverbank, like field type place near our house, and we used to do big barbecues. We'd get a live stage with proper music being played, and Dad would be in charge of the barbie and everything like that. It just created that fun atmosphere. I'd go around jiggling the bucket and people would throw in loose change and sometimes notes, and it was just that atmosphere would create the fundraising side of it. I can't remember what year it was, year 9, I think. When I was in year 9 in secondary school, I arranged a music concert at school as part of my GCSE music coursework. We had to create a music concert, and I was put as the leader. So I organised it to fundraise money for Ellen MacArthur, and it was actually a really big hit. Lots of students participated and played their music in some form, and loads of students came to watch, and they had to pay tickets to get in, and we sold drinks and snacks, and all the money went to Ellen MacArthur. So that was quite a taste of what I could do, but within the structure of the school. So I was still like being supported through it. And then most recently, which quite a few people know about, I decided that I want to do something big because, of course, my 10th anniversary. My years are being messed up a little bit because I can never work out how old I've been and when I actually came on trips. But it's been about 10 years, as per this podcast. So I decided to jump off the Spinnaker Tower, as I've gone around telling quite a few people. I didn't actually jump off. I did jump, but not off the top, just off the first little platform for the drop. That was my first challenge. Then I went up and did the virtual reality. So they put the goggles on, and I had to collect coins from the outside of the Spinnaker Tower while stood inside the Spinnaker Tower. And then the other one I did was ringing the bell. So walking along the pole and then ringing the bell, which was actually really further than you thought. Nearly hit a couple of people in the face because, of course, I can't actually see what's actually around me. I can just see the bell in the distance. And then the abseil, the 100-meter abseil from nearly the top of the Spinnaker all the way to the bottom. And that was terrifying, beautiful, and amazing all in one. It was the best feeling of my life to know that I'm abseiling, which the only type of abseiling I've done is coming down off the high ropes at Bradwell or the Lake District. It was the furthest I've got. So this was something completely different. And I loved it. Like, I loved just being able to see Portsmouth, which is where I was born and grew up. And just the feeling that I was doing something amazing for the trust that had raised by this point an awful lot of money and was still raising money. And I had all my family and friends at the bottom cheering me along.
I was going to say, how are you with heights?
I'm fine with heights, actually. Yeah, the Spinnaker Tower actually conquered my fear of heights as a child. My dad took me up there and made me walk across the glass floor barefoot. So that soon fixed my fear of heights. And then, of course, sailing with the trust, you if you go on the high ropes, you can't be afraid of heights. So that was always, I've always been fine with heights.
It seems kind of like opportunities to fundraise are beginning to open back up in the UK. So what kind of advice would you have for young people who are maybe looking to start fundraising themselves, but don't know where to start? Are there things you can do to make it easier or make it more fun for yourself?
Just go with what you love. So the Spinnaker Tower held a huge childhood memory for me. You know, as I said, I born and grew up in Portsmouth, so it was like that pinpoint in my geography. But also, I knew that the trust had a connection to it. They'd done quite a bit of fundraising around the Spinnaker, so it was already that connection was already there. But other things I've done, like I was already doing a music GCSE, so why not create a music concert? I've done for other charities. For CLIC Sargent, I did a 200-mile cycle ride. So that was, I love cycling. Let's go for a cycle ride. Just happened to be 200 miles long, not 5. It's just go with what you love. If you love baking, bake. If you love running, run. If you love swimming, swim. It's whatever you love to do, go and do it. And if you can raise some money for this amazing charity at the same time, then brilliant.
So you have this long-term relationship with the trust. What kind of long-term impact has that had on your life outside of the trust?
It sounds really cheesy, but I know that I wouldn't be sat here right now if it wasn't for the trust. So one of the reasons I kept coming back every year was because I'd get to about Easter, around my birthday time, and I would know that my confidence, my courage was starting to run out. And then come summer holidays, I jumped straight back into a trust trip, and my confidence and courage would be renewed, full up, overflowing, and I'd go on and do the next step in my life. So my first trip, I just left year 6 with 98 children in my primary school. I went to a secondary school that had 2,000 children. The courage I gained from my first trust trip helped overcome the cancer I just faced, but also the fact that I moved into year 7 with that many children. When I left year 7, we moved up to Lincolnshire from the south, and I went on my second trust trip, and that helped me overcome that fear of moving into a new place, starting a new school, that extra thing that was coming up in my life. Beginning of year 9, I started my GCSEs, so that trust trip helped me to get into that phase. Year 10 and 11, I actually sat my GCSEs, so again, the trust trip helped me with that. You know, I moved to sixth form, the trust trip helped me with that. And then when I became a volunteer, my first trip as a volunteer was the trip before I came to university. So it was literally like a few weeks beforehand. And honestly, even though that trip was possibly one of the worst trips I've had because I was ill, I still wouldn't have gone to university if I hadn't had all the trips in the past and then that trip there. University was such a big jump. I came back down south. I moved 200 miles away from my parents to live on my own in halls. It was to do something I've wanted to do my whole life, but it still felt like a huge change. And the trust they just really helped me. Like, it's just everything they throw at you in the trips makes you think you can face anything in real life. And I've faced so much since that first day on the 26th. Was it the 26th of July 2010, you said?
So what is it your life's like now?
So now I have graduated university, sort of. When there's an actual graduation, I can walk across the stage. But I've finished university for 3 years. I've graduated with a BA Honours Primary Teaching degree. However, because of the coronavirus and something happened in my last year, I've decided not to pursue my QTS, my Qualified Teacher status. So I've got a teaching assistant job lined up for September, to start on the 7th of September in a local primary school, 10-minute cycle ride from my flat. And I've been in a couple of times. I've met my class teacher. I've met some of the children that I'm going to have, because of course not all of them are back yet. And I'm just really, really excited for that next chapter that I've really been prepared for. Slightly worried because there's no trust trip this year. Facing a massive change and there's no trust trip to give me that courage boost. But at the same time, I feel like I've got 10 years stored up, so I can pull a bit of extra out of those, and I'm ready to face what comes my way in September.
We always play a game of best bit, worst bit, funniest bit at the end of Trust Trips and at the end of Sound Waves as well. Normal episodes, we split it between three guests, so you have the freedom to tell us either your best, worst, or funniest bit, or if you've got all three, then please tell us all three.
Oh, hang on, that's 10 years of trip.
It's a huge greatest hits to delve back into.
I guess the best bit I'll try and do all three. The best bit has always just been the water, whether that be water fights, sailing on the water, falling into the water, watching another boat capsize into the water. At the Lake District, we have to put these tags on, and the arms fill up with water. So just watching people lift their arms up and all the water runs down into their chest and tummy. It's just that the best bit is the water. I think it's so healing in multiple ways. The worst bit has always been the sleeping. I love my sleep. If Frank or Dan are listening right now, they will be nodding along. Because I absolutely love, as soon as they say, right, 9 o'clock, don't be in your rooms because people want to go to bed, I'm in bed. That is me right up there. Even as a volunteer, if I'm not on shift, I'm in bed at 9 o'clock. So the worst bit has been the sleeping, but it's the thing you get into, isn't it? The funniest bit, I think the funniest bit has been the young people. Let me explain. Just the way they change drastically, and the connections they make. Some of them, they're best friends one year, and you come back suddenly and they're not best friends, and it's like, whoa, what happened? Hang on, let me catch up here. And it's like no time has passed between any of us, but suddenly everything's passed, and you've got all this gossip to catch up on, and it's just that funny side of life that no one thinks about, but we're all connected, so we're all best friends, and we need that connection to last. It's just like the different some of the young people that come through. Honestly, I go home and I don't stop laughing for another week. They're just the things they do, the things they say, the way they act. It's just hilarious, and it really just keeps me going. Like, the worst bit being the sleep, but the funniest bit being the way that young people just keep me going through the week. Like, who needs sleep when you've got that laughter going on all week?
There you have it. A huge thank you to Izzy for taking us through her time with the Trust so far, and to you too for listening in. There's lots going on at the Trust right now with our virtual summer in full swing, and I'd love to point you towards a new upcoming event. We'll be holding virtual coffee mornings for parents and guardians to talk with the Trust team, including volunteers and skippers. These will be a chance to get to know more about what happens in trips, ask questions, and just become more familiar with what the Trust does. Keep an eye out on social media and your inboxes for when these are announced soon. As always, check out our What's On page for all the latest Trust Tuesday hangouts, how-to videos from skippers, Wider Horizons career and life skills talks, pen pal deadlines, book club information, and more. You can listen to Soundwaves on our website, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, so please do subscribe and rate us if you want to hear more from the Trust. We've got a super special guest next week, you're not going to want to miss that one. Until then, be well and take care.